PQ Big Decisions, the Bloomberg Quint podcast that helps you make the right financial choices. Hey guys, thanks for listening in to this PQ Big Decisions podcast. I'm your host, Alex Matthew. Over the course of the next weeks and months, we're going to deal with a number of personal finance principles that you should know about when you're making major financial decisions. We'll talk about saving for your retirement, buying a house, your child's education, financial independence, and a lot more. But before we do all of that, the first thing that we need to do is lay the foundation. How do you save? If you're starting out, what are the first steps that you need to take, and what are the boxes that you need to tick? If you're investing already, are you going about it the right way? To give you answers to all of those questions, I have with me certified financial planner Harshvardhan Rungta of Rungta Securities. Thanks so much for joining us today, Harsh.
My pleasure, Alex.
All right, so we were talking about this just before we started recording, and what you were mentioning is that before we get into the principles of saving, all of that, there's one thing that you need to pay attention to, and that's spending. And you're saying that spending is actually the key element here, the missing piece that nobody looks at.
Absolutely. So if you're looking at money management, okay, that's different from investment management, that's different from financial planning. The first thing, money management, we all spend money. The most important factor is, do we know how to spend?
Right.
If we don't know how to spend money, how are we going to be able to manage money?
So what you're saying essentially is that before I think about where I want to invest and why I want to invest, I need to figure out what I'm spending on and how much I'm spending?
Absolutely. And are you actually a wise spender? Now, I'll give you an example of this movie. It's an old Bollywood movie, which I recommend that you must see it once.
Okay.
It's called Mala Mal, and it was featuring Nazruddin Shah. It's an old movie.
Right.
Now, in this movie, Nazruddin Shah is a slum dweller. Okay, he comes from a very humble background. He's amongst those slum dwellers. Now, suddenly one day he realizes, and somebody approaches him and says that you have an uncle who's left 300 crores rupees for
What?
you.
Who? Come on. So I wish I had an uncle like that.
Absolutely. So this particular uncle of yours has passed away, and he's willed 300 crores to you.
Wow. Okay.
Now, there's a condition before that. If you have to claim 300 crores, you will be given 30 crores first.
Okay.
Now, that 30 crores, you have to spend entirely in 30 days. So, that's about 1 crore to be spent in a day. Now, the purpose and the idea behind this is that he should know how to spend money. So that when 300 crores come to him, he does not really believe that, that, and he spends that entire money at one shot.
So it's kind of like getting, never having tasted pizza and tasting pizza for the first time and then gorging yourself on pizza, right?
Absolutely. So the idea is, then you see that when you watch the movie, you'll see that how he actually tries to spend as much as he can. And, he doesn't land up spending that much. And then what he does. So that's the movie about. The whole idea and the purpose is that you should know how to spend.
Right. So how do we put all of that together, learnings really from that movie that you're suggesting, into somebody, say, who hasn't started investing or saving yet? So suppose you have a blank slate to work with. What advice would you give to that person?
Okay, so let's just take example of we as parents, when we are giving pocket money to our children. The first thing, being Indian culture and being in our mindsets, we are like a savings economy. So even while we are giving that meager pocket money to our children, the first thing before handing it to them, we're telling them, "Sab uda mat dena." Okay. Save some bit of it. Now imagine, walk into step into the shoes of the child.
We've all been there. Yeah, we've been there.
So when I'm taking pocket money from my parents, okay, if I were to take pocket money from my parents, I'm saying, at first, you're not giving me enough.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what's going on in my mind.
Absolutely.
And then before you give it to me, you're telling me I should save it. What you're going to do? What are you going to do?
Right. You're supposed to be saving for me.
Exactly. This is not my time to think about, okay, I need to get into it eventually, but allow me to spend this money freely the way I want to. Okay, the first thing is give your child the liberty to learn how to spend.
Okay.
So simple. If you're giving him a few thousand rupees, just allow them to spend.
Or even 100 rupees or 200 rupees.
Whatever amount that you're giving to your child as pocket money, just let him or her have the liberty to spend that money. Okay? What you do initially is just let them do what they're doing with that money. Okay? Be a fence sitter. Do not do anything. Post a couple of months, so it could be 2 months or 3 months, that they've done exactly what they felt like. Then you sit down with them and you ask them to just note down their expenses. Okay? Not stopping them yet. Okay? You just ask them that whatever you're spending on, fair enough. What you've done for the last 3 months, no questions asked.
Right.
Now all I'm asking you to do is just write down wherever you're spending. So what they will do is they will start writing that down.
Got it.
Let them do this exercise without giving them any guidance or any, for that matter, any opinion. Then what you do after that is you tell them that now you analyze your expenses. Could you have saved some kind of money if you wanted to? So then they will get into that habit of looking back into their expenses and changing their spending habits.
Got it. So you seem to have some experience having done this. You've done this with your son, I think.
Absolutely. So what take a small example again. I mean, we go for a movie. So if you have a child my child is much older now, but this is an exercise we undertook much earlier. So if you have a child about 8 or 9 years of age and you're going for a movie, in the interval, I mean, you're going to buy some popcorns, you're going to buy some food items. Just hand over 200 rupees or whatever money to your child who's 8-year-old. So many times you'll be thinking like this, that maybe he'll just lose that money, he'll drop it somewhere.
Right.
So why is that block? I mean, think of it like that. Even if he drops it, what's your downtake?
The maximum you lose is 200 rupees.
Whatever you've given into in his hands, that's the amount that he will lose.
Right.
But isn't there a bigger lesson? The moment he loses that money, can you not ask him to be a little responsible next time?
Right. Okay, so what we're trying to say is inculcate that understanding of spending as early as possible. But what if we're talking about somebody who, say, is in their late 20s, who's been working for 5 years or so, and who hasn't started yet? How do they start?
Okay, so simple things. First you will have to, again, start understanding how to spend wisely.
Right.
Because you cannot simply ask a person, if somebody comes to me for advice as financial planners, I mean, people come to us saying that I'm not able to save.
Right.
So fine, then we start putting it down their throat saying that no, you must save 20% of your income. That's exactly his problem. He's come to me saying that I'm not able to save.
Right.
And then I'm telling him something that he's unable to do in any case.
So it's counterproductive.
It's counterproductive. So what we do is we encourage him to start spending wisely. Right. So initial, the tracking is only saying budgeting, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. We give them a tool which we called envelope budgeting.
Okay.
That envelope budgeting is a very simple exercise to say, why don't you just note down whatever your discretionary expenses are, whatever your mandatory expenses such as rent, utilities, there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, that anyway gets transferred at the start of the month, right?
So what you do is all your discretionary expenses which you have control on, so such as your dining, your holidaying, your movie outings, etc.
Clothes, shopping,
a biggest component. What you do is you simply make envelopes. Right. Okay, at the beginning of the month, say you put 5,000 rupees in a dining envelope. Right. You put 5,000 in your shopping envelope. Right. You put 5,000 in your outings, movie outings, and etc. Right. And so every time that you're going out dining, you have to dip into that particular envelope.
Okay.
And the moment you're exhausted of that 5,000 rupees,
you can't touch any of the other envelopes.
You cannot touch any of the other envelopes. Right. So if you've not shopped in that particular month, fine, that's your savings.
Right.
But your dining budget was only 5,000 in that month. The moment you're exhausted with that envelope, you cannot go out dining very clearly.
Okay. So it's instilling this idea of putting limits to your spending.
Absolutely. And there's another envelope that you need to create. It's a credit card envelope.
Right.
So in case you've gone out somewhere and there was an offer on your credit card, you've chosen to swipe your card.
Right.
And it is for dining, for example. Then you remove money out of the dining envelope and you put it in your credit card envelope.
Okay.
So every time you swipe, you don't need to necessarily wait for the bill to come to you at the end of the billing cycle. What you need to do is put that money in that credit card envelope. So every time you swipe, equivalent amount needs to go into the credit card envelope.
All right. So we've spoken about the envelope method of really apportioning expenses. There are some other methods that people have suggested, keeping 3 accounts, having one for your salary, one for your expenses, one for your investments. I think there are multiple methods out there, but the principle really is to be aware of how much you're spending and to, after a period of time, just start making notes about what you're spending on, right? What do you do after?
So after you've started making a note of wherever you're spending, now this exercise need not be only for a college student, it could be even for a person who's about to retire. So just note down your expenses. Now after you do this, then you have to start identifying that there are certain areas which make you vulnerable. For example, you need to have contingency fund.
Okay.
So if anything were to go wrong, okay, there is a financial emergency. There's an electronic, some electronic gadgets in your house have broken down.
Right.
Or you need to change furniture. There has been a natural calamity because of your car has been damaged or your furniture has been damaged. There could be any kind of a contingency. You need to have some money available with you.
Okay.
Which can be used and which can be accessed to immediately.
All right. So I've heard this a lot from financial planners, right? They say that you identify how much you're earning, how much your expenses are, and then a multiple of your expenses per month is what you keep in your contingencies, right? I've heard 6 months being talked about. Is that realistic?
So, But theoretically speaking, yes. I mean, you need to have 6 months of your expenses available to you at call. So anytime that you wish, you can break into it. The question really arises is that if you're going to actually put the math in place, work out like this. If a person is earning 50,000 rupees a month, and that is almost about the expenses that he incurs. Now, if he has to create a 3 lakh rupees corpus, which is a 6 months contingency fund. So if you're earning 50,000 rupees, I'm saying your savings rate in any lifestyle would be about 20%.
Right.
So you save about...
That's what you aspire to.
That's what you aspire to do.
Yeah.
So 20% of your income, if you're saving, that is 10,000 rupees a month. It takes you 30 months to accumulate 3 lakh of rupees.
So nearly 3 years it takes you to accumulate 3 lakh rupees.
How is it possible? And if 3 years, if 2.5 to 3 years is what you're spending on just accumulating contingency fund, when are you going to plan for other things in life?
Okay, so that's a fair point. So ideally, in a realistic sense, how much does somebody set aside?
So you should target to have about at least 2 months money available with you. And if you have the resources to accumulate 6 months, yes, go for it.
Okay.
But invariably in common man's life, we would not have this kind of a liberty or the luxury to have 6 months of our expenses available to us at call.
All right. So 2 months of expenses, where do you put it?
Yeah. So the investment, now it's about putting it somewhere where you can call for it at your discretion. And it should be available to you over a period of, say, probably 1 day.
Right.
So either you could leave it in your bank account, which is not really a wise thing to do.
Okay.
But we're talking about an absolute layman.
Because you could end up spending it.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
So what you do is you create a fixed deposit in the same bank in which you have your bank account. So that's a simpler thing to do for somebody who's completely averse to financial planning and financial products. Otherwise, of course, we have liquid funds. We have all
Right. This is what I hear all the time. You should ideally have a liquid fund.
Yeah, but then now come back to practical points. If I'm talking to somebody who's in a tier 2 city, and he's really not well versed with financial products, to get him to invest in a liquid fund, I mean, may put him off. What you could simply do is just put in the same, create a fixed deposit to the same bank in which you have money.
Okay.
And more importantly, from a contingency point of view, I mean, just make sure you have credit cards.
Okay. All right. So we've got contingencies out of the way. What else do you have to bear in mind very quickly?
Okay. So to begin with, just make sure that you have adequate and all the right kind of insurance policies.
Okay.
Now, this has to happen even if you do not have money left for investments. So we keep hearing this always, saying that, delay expenses, but do not delay investments.
Right.
We'll take this one step further. Delay investments if the need be, but do not delay insurance.
Okay, so insurance is absolutely key. You need life insurance, you need health cover. What else do you need?
So there are 4 kind of policies that you need to be careful about, and you need to have it in your portfolio. One is a life insurance in the form of a term plan.
Yeah.
You need to have disability insurance. Now, disability insurance due to accident, disability because of accident, and disability due to illness. And then you need to have a mediclaim.
All right, just a small point to our listeners. We are going to get into all of this in a lot more detail, whether you should take a term plan or something else, why you need a health insurance, how much do you need to cover for. This is essentially just a primer about what are the different steps that you need to take to set your financial life right. All right, but beyond that, there's then, of course, identifying what your goals are, right? And then investing accordingly.
Absolutely. So having understood how to spend money wisely, then having understood how to budget it, how to have a contingency fund with the right kind of insurances, then the step comes in actually saving and investing that money for certain responsibilities in your life or certain aspirations that you may have, which are your goals.
And these obviously depend on the context that each person is in.
Absolutely.
It depends on the stage of life that you are at. It depends on who your dependents are, what you want to do really, if you want to buy a house or otherwise. We're going to talk about all of that and specifically on goal-based investing and its merits in one of the podcasts that we're going to do just a short while from now. But thank you so much, Harsh, for joining us on this conversation and really giving us a bit of a primer as to how to start living a better financial life.
Thank you, Alex. It's my pleasure always.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this first edition of BQ Big Decisions. There's a lot more coming up on Bloomberg Quint, so do stay tuned. This is Alex Matthews signing off. Have a lovely day. BQ Big Decisions, the Bloomberg Quint podcast that helps you make the right financial choices.